Great. Okay, here we are all together. Welcome to the 2016 Fall Art Lecture Series, or all together. This is a lecture series that brings a range of interdisciplinary approaches to contemporary art by artists, writers, activists, and scholars. And it's a way to introduce a variety of practices. The emphasis is on the process and the practice of all of these people and various fields of inquiry around the arts. We like it to be thought of as a lively forum for exchange of ideas between the speaker on the stage, the students, the faculty, and the public. This is open to the public as well. And it's an opportunity, a rare opportunity on the campus where we are speaking across programs too. So this is a shared curricular moment. Most of the talks are on every other Wednesday from 11:30 to 1, and we will be moving to Lecture Hall 1 starting week 4, which is really exciting. I really want to thank a bunch of people that make this happen. As you can see, what was going on in the last 10 minutes was the coordination of people who work in the buildings and run these facilities and schedule these rooms with a lot of competing pressure from various programs to take these rooms. So they do a lot of work and hustle, especially when something like this happens at the beginning of a year. People had reserved rooms in the lecture hall buildings and they're not ready, so it's scramble and move around. So I want to, and this particular series holds up to anywhere from 50 to 300 people, so it can be quite a bit of work if you don't have a room that holds that many. So it's goodwill and labor that goes into this, and it's absolutely indispensable work. So these people who do the facilities and classrooms are Susan Keefe, Shannon Stewart, Karen Johnson, and in the art annex, it's Michelle Pope. The electronic media people have also been really supportive. At the beginning, we didn't have any recording, then it was audio, and now we have a full-on beautiful recording staff each lecture that goes onto YouTube that programs can then refer back to and the public can see, and the artists themselves can take that forward. There was a talk by Cassie Thornton that was on a radio show, and then she did an interview. So these go out into the world and have future lives. So the electronic media people, they also set up the projector, and we were counting on them for the overflow room. They do a ton, and without them, we would not be at this level either. And they are Ben Hargett, Dave Crampton, Peter Ranlett, Raoul Berman, and the student interns and workers, and we have Rai here with his crew. And then we have an administrative person that's helping me with the contracts and inviting the artists in and giving them directions and a warm welcome. That's Julie Ron. Also, the college has been supportive in funding and supporting us, and they are interested in increasing that support and so that we can keep going. So let's just thank all of them, please, that invisible labor, important labor. So quickly, this quarter, we have today Emily Adams. On week 4, we have Geraldine Andrzejczyk, and she currently has an exhibition at the Evergreen Gallery, so before coming to her talk, it would be advisable to go see the show. Week 6 is Charles Mudede. So Geraldine is coming from Reed College in Portland. Charles Mudede is coming from Seattle. Week 7, Anna Moshevikis, and I think she is coming from New York. And week 8 is Molly Dilworth, also another artist coming from New York. So we have a full lineup. Week 10 is up in the air. I'm not sure, depending on how many programs are interested. We will have a venue for week 10. So I want to briefly mention etiquette in this space. The lectures are an hour and a half long. Generally, the artist speaks for an hour, and then it's a half an hour of Q&A. That's the part where we have the lively discussion of ideas. And we ask that you use the mics that are set up. I think there's just one mic set up on that stairwell right there in this room. Go to the mic so that we can record your question and everyone can hear it clearly. it is we transition from lecture to Q&A, it's not the time to leave. A massive exodus is a strange feeling for those that are staying and for the person at the podium. So please try not to do that. Please think of this as one full thing, both parts of it. And also coming and going is a bit of an issue because you can see how dark it is when doors open, and especially in those lecture halls, this was an issue. The light was really disruptive in the noise. So if you can sort of plan around that hour and a half, we would all appreciate it. Thank you. And I'd like to have Lisa Sweet come and introduce Emily for us. So thanks.
Hi, y'all. Can you hear me? So Shaw just left one person off that list, I think, right? I didn't hear Shaw, so I'll do it. Shaw, thank you for coordinating these lecture series for several years now, for curating it, bringing folks in. This is what Shaw does. She doesn't have to, and she does this on behalf of various faculty who say, hey, Shaw, like me, who said, hey, Shaw, could we invite Emily? And she said, yeah, sure, I'll get on it, and she took care of it. So thank you, Shaw, for doing that. Yeah. Okay. So part of the context I'll set up for you for Emily's lecture today. So some of you know, and know deep in your heart, that the printmaking studios were offline from 2013 till about 2015. And that's because we shut them down, we renovated them. They are non-toxic and absolutely gorgeous. And we just were able to open them this year. So first of all, for folks who've been clamoring to get into the print studio, they are opening because we have everything in place. You can be safe and creative. And we hired Emily. And she's fantastic. So thank you for your patience over the last couple of years. Things are up and running. Emily is our printmaking technician, and in addition, she's been teaching at Evergreen since last spring. She teaches drawing and printmaking, primarily, I think, relief and screen printing is what you've been doing, but I expect that may expand. She got her BFA at Columbus College of Art and Design. She got her MFA at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, and then came directly here to be our printmaking technician. Emily has a lot of experience, and she's won a number of awards. One award of many is the David and Edith Sinaiko Woman in the Arts Award, and her work has been featured in American Painting magazine. She's also worked as a printmaker at Pace Editions in New York, right? And Tandem Press, which is in Madison. It's a commercial printmaking studio that works with typically blue chip artists, and students get to work with those artists in the studio. So she's printed at 2 high caliber print houses. I think with that, I'll let Emily introduce herself. Please welcome Emily Adams.
All right, hi. Great to see everyone here on a rainy afternoon, but it is October, so I guess that's something to expect here in Olympia. It's my pleasure to be here with you today, so I appreciate your time. And I'm really going to try to stick with that 1 hour so we can engage a little bit. And so think about questions you might have throughout this lecture. I have a lot to go over with all of you, and I'm going to hopefully not rush. So I'm going to start about a little over 15 years ago, though. We're going to go back. I'm going to show you my path on how I ended up here today, as Lisa has introduced, that I'm here at Evergreen as the printmaking technician and adjunct faculty. So some of the topics that I'd like to point out are themes that I look at in my work, and as we go through, we'll see how each one kind of snowballs into the next art series, art project, art exhibition. Each of these are building upon each other throughout my work, and they are agency, my artisthood, making it, pattern, design, vulnerability, boundaries, urgency, reflection, and career. So let's start with agency. I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, and that's where I had one of my first photography classes as a young person at age 13. That really was kind of a turning point for me. I had taken art classes as a youngster, but then that, being in middle school and having the opportunity to take, it was a free photography class through the public library system. It was a huge benefit for me. I know that we all come from different backgrounds, but being here at Evergreen, we're kind of at the level of college student. I'm just sharing with you that insight of my youth and what led me jumping into my undergraduate studies at the Columbus College of Art and Design, as Lisa mentioned. So this is in Columbus, Ohio. For the first time, I had the free agency moving away from my home and everything I was familiar with, and went on this adventure, a 4-year art program that's strictly based in the Bauhaus movement. So I don't know how much you're familiar with that, but it's the idea of connecting craft and fine art to create kind of a functioning art and design in the world that we live in. So it was pretty intense. This school, I heard rumors, and I don't know the statistics, but rumors on campus were, oh, the workload is much harder than Harvard even, right? Much more intense than Harvard. And we were like patting ourselves on the back. Oh, we have to make a painting every week. But, we got through it as a team. I made amazing connections. I'd say for you, in your time here at Evergreen, part of the networking is one of the biggest things that you're going to leave here with and carry with you for the rest of your life. And yes, that's not graphic design. That's not a computer Photoshop. That's an actual 90-foot structure that says art. So I went through 2 years of this Bauhaus program, and I thought, whoa, this is intense. I need to take a break. So I moved back to Louisville, Kentucky. For this 1-year period, I was working in a factory. You can see a photo of myself there in the center. The tall guy is my little brother. And then a friend next to me was one of the lost boys of Sudan. So from 1983 to 2005, there were about 20,000 young men orphaned or displaced from Sudan, Africa. And several refugees were in Louisville, Kentucky during the time I was working in this factory. So it was a pretty, moving experience to become friends with this person, and the experience of working in a factory and really gaining a perspective of what I have, these choices in front of me, right? In that same year, my brother gained a higher raise than I did at the same company from which we started at the same date. And I thought, okay, that seems a little screwy. I need to get out of this industry. So I ended up finding 2 other jobs, worked my butt off, and that summer I took a trip to Sri Lanka. So this was the summer of 2002. I traveled with a friend of mine and her father. We stayed at a Buddhist monastery. This was in Ambilapitiya, Sri Lanka. And keep in mind, that's right after the attacks on the World Trade Centers in 2001. So traveling, especially to a third world country, was kind of a risky thing, and I applaud my parents for unleashing me at that time. I worked hard to get that plane ticket and have this experience because the opportunity opened up. So I got to really get to know these young monks, and they made an impression on me. I was really intrigued by the way that they are in a position to choose to become a monk, yet also at the same time, there's kind of this double-edged sword where that really was their best option and opportunity in life, to have food and shelter and someone caring for them. Of course, each one was an individual situation, but for the most part, studying to become a monk was their best option. So these images here are of different statues. I'll share with you this one with the yellow curtain surrounding it. That, while I was there with a friend of mine, we were restoring. That's a 1,500-year-old Buddha statue. So it's really an honor to be a part and immersed in this culture that was new to me. And then upon returning to the States, I decided it was time to go back to school and finish my degree. So I went back to the Columbus College of Art and Design, and I worked on this series that I was inspired by from being with the young monks. And so the piece as a whole is titled Turrell, which is symbolizing it's a name to suggest an honorable person. And each of the monks, I tried to create a place for them to be recognized significantly as an individual amongst that grid pattern. Let me go back. So amongst this pattern where they are all in the same garb, there is an individual within each one. So it's breaking down the icon of what a monk might be and looking at the boy dressed in that robe. And this one, his name is Rathanasiri. Very friendly, every day would come and offer tea. I think that was the only English that he knew, just tea. We'd usually say yes. Another young monk, and I'll share with you this process here. So these are prints. It's a photo intaglio or photo etching, printed on a Japanese paper. And if you can see, there's a layer right behind. That paper is so thin that you can vaguely see some of the maroon printing that is sticking out underneath. And that is a screen print on a muslin fabric. So while I was in Sri Lanka, although I didn't know that I was going to put this body of work together, I had the foresight to think, okay, I want to photograph each of them, and then I'll have them write their name. I had one young monk help actually get the typewriter out and type their names for me. So I had that document to work with, and like I said, I didn't know how it would come together until I was back in the classroom and kind of let that formulate. So that was a big part of my BFA thesis. In addition, in this same exhibition, I included a body of work that I had started, I believe, in 1994, originally called the Polaroid Project. I later changed the name to Your Photo Here. So I was making a connection from the individual portraits of these Buddhist monks and this series of Polaroids that I was taking of acquaintances, friends, strangers. I had invited people to have their portrait taken and write or draw, manipulate these 2 pages of a sketchbook and just kind of capture a little meeting with each of these people that cross paths with me. As someone did point out, this was before Facebook, so the project kind of trailed off as it's still very important to me, but the significance of what I was doing there is changed with the way that we are communicating through social media now. But if you think of it in a way, that was kind of a precursor. So let's see. These are some images of the gallery as an undergraduate student. So you get kind of the feeling, these are earlier stages of how I'm starting to look at the space and consider my work in relationship to an interior. And later you'll see I evolve into more installation work. So that was it, 2005, I graduated. Then what? I'm an artist, right? I wish I thought that at the time. I graduated and wow, it was hard to find work. I took on a lot of student debt, and my first job that I applied to was with a screen printer. I honestly don't remember the name. It was a small company. Excuse me. Yeah, so that experience, applying to that job, I was really excited. I knew all of the techniques. I was ready, probably the most proficient that this person was going to be able to hire. However, after turning in my application and bugging the administrative front desk for a couple of weeks, they finally took me aside and said, the owner won't talk with you because you're a woman. And so that was 2005, not that long ago. And so then I started thinking, wow, this is the industry that I'm in. This is what I'm doing with my life. And that kind of gave me more reason to pursue it. So I found work at various art museums, front desks, hotel, and an architecture firm eventually. But they were all part-time, no benefits. And that was a good 7-year period. But in the meantime, while I was doing that part-time work, I pursued my art and participated in as many art fairs as possible. So I don't know, if some of you have probably had some experience doing that, but I figured out it wasn't for me after a while. I had enough work to be selling, but I kind of wasn't feeling that I was reaching my potential. However, those art fairs led to more exposure, and I had folks invite me to do different workshops. This is a screen printing demonstration at the Speed Art Museum in Louisville, and you can see the Henry Moore in the background. It's a legit museum. But that was really exciting for me, and it left me feeling really positive and wanting to go to graduate school and focus on my studies. So here we go, making it. How did I get 7 years out and then into a graduate program? I think taking that time out was really beneficial for me to value going to graduate school and getting everything I could out of it. I applied to several schools, and the one I did get into was the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And at first, I did not receive funding. However, I spoke with one of the professors who was looking for an assistant, and that's what I'm talking about, making it. So there are ways to go to graduate school and not have to go into debt for the rest of your life. So I entered the program, School of Human Ecology, and now I know if you're familiar, the University of Wisconsin is well known for its printmaking department within the School of Education. So those are two different schools. And the reason I chose School of Human Ecology was because I knew how competitive the printmaking program would be. It's incredible, almost 30 graduate students. It's a huge program, world-renowned for what they do there. However, I was out of school for 7 years. My portfolio wasn't the strongest. You know, I was really honest with myself. I went to the school, took a tour, talked with everyone. I didn't know this was even a possibility until I took that tour. And I'm really glad that I was introduced to this program. It also was an MFA program, right? So Masters of Fine Arts. And remarkably, again, another competitive program, I was accepted. And this is my graduating class. Right? So 3 people. And all doing very different things, but earning our MFA. And while I was there, I was also closely linked to everything going on in the art department, and really pushing our department to become more involved, having shows involved with the other art students and bridging a gap that had been missing there. So that professor I was mentioning that I worked for, it was Jennifer Angus. Her work featured on the left. And then additionally, I worked for John Hitchcock. My graduate career was a 3-year program. So I worked for both of these artists and professors during my time to help pay tuition. So most recently, Jennifer's work there is at the Renwick at the Smithsonian in DC. So it was really an exciting job. It was hard work. I had to keep up with my studies, but occasionally we would be traveling. It's hard to tell. I encourage you to look up her work later, but these designs on the wall there are all insects. So thousands of insects, 1 to 2 weeks of installation time, all pinned and nailed to the wall by hand. So it became a big part of my experience while I was there. And then John Hitchcock, I worked with him a little bit less, but did a lot of screen printing and hand cutting. And my summers, I got to spend in New York working. So I worked, actually interned with Pace Gallery. This is Kenny Scharf and Akimi Martin, who work at the Pace Paper Studio. So when I first was interested in Pace, I didn't think I'd be working in paper. But fortunately, the University of Wisconsin hosted a printmaking symposium. Dick Solomon and Jacob Lewis were part of this event, kind of just like this today. I mean, these are big names, right? Big, important people in the art world. And I thought, well, they're right here. I just walked up to them afterwards and I said, "Hi, I'd like to work for you." And thinking, okay, they'll blow me off. They've got other things to do. But gratefully, Jacob was like, "Send an email, send your resume." So I did, and that's how I ended up being able to spend my summer in New York. Of course, it was unpaid, but it's an experience I'll have with me. And I've learned so much from that I will still implement in the studios, even here at Evergreen. So then that was the summer of 2013. I knew I had 2 summers in graduate school, right, being a 3-year program. So I wanted to take advantage of both summers. That second summer, I was invited to work at the Pace Edition, so that is the printmaking studio. This is in Manhattan proper. Pace Paper is in Brooklyn. So I really got to also experience a city that I was, I've been intrigued with for a long time, and I had been considering moving to. So a lot of Bob Dylan every day in this studio. Here's some of the master printers. You have Bill Hall in the plaid shirt on the left, and then Sarah Carpenter in the plaid shirt on the right. This was the entire crew, including little old me intern. But that's the powerhouse that makes all of your print editions from Pace. So it was really nice to see where these things are coming from. It's an incredible amount of work. I have a huge appreciation just seeing their process and being able to lend a hand. This is the series that I was helping with during that summer, James Turrell. These are based on his retrospective at the Guggenheim. So little perks of the unpaid internship. I got to meet James Turrell and his wife. It was really, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, maybe. So then back at Wisconsin, I also worked at Tandem Press. And this is one of their master printers who I worked most closely with, Bruce Crownover. And then he's pictured here with an artwork from Alison Sarr. So at these printing presses, these printing studios, the way they usually work is an artist will be invited to come and create work in the space, and the master printer will produce an edition. So that's the time spent with the interns, and these editions are exceptionally perfect and to the level of just mastery. What that artist creates, that series, and it might be 35 prints, replicate the hand quality of that best print every time. So Alison Sarr, who else did we work with? Richard Bosman. Right. Let's now look at some of my work. And keep in mind, so since I've gotten into graduate school on this timeline, graduate school through basically the end of this slide presentation, this is a 3-year period, right? So I think I mentioned my graduate experience. It was time to take advantage of all the opportunities I had because I had been out of school 7 years, and I knew that I was there for a purpose, a reason, and determined to keep working. So pattern, right? The School of Human Ecology, that's where I started my work. And what does that mean? So here I was coming from a Bauhaus background, education, craft, and fine art, and how that fits in the world, right, with design. The School of Human Ecology is the same idea. How do we as humans exist in this world, and how can we make it better in a sense of design? So with my print background, I combined my 2D design with my 3-dimensional installation inclinations and studied pattern design. So that is going to be fabric, wallpaper, mainly 2-dimensional design, right? Here's a study. It's hard to tell, but these are based on Frank Lloyd Wright, of course, native from the Wisconsin area. I did study. I like to get involved with my surroundings. Fascinating person. So after visiting nearly 20 of his architectural buildings, I, from my photography collection, created these repeating pattern designs. Now these are only existing digitally. However, other prints, like this study of Wanda Jackson, I printed. These are photographs of prints, not the digital rendition. So learning pattern design, coming into that program for the first time, not with a huge background in fashion or textiles. I'm kind of bringing my fine art, nature, and inquiries to the world of fashion and these traditions. I think sometimes that's a huge benefit to have that different perspective and approach it differently. This piece was really exciting for me. Again, taking in my surroundings, I created this with the snow that Wisconsin, you've heard it snows a lot sometimes there. So this is a snow die. and that's how the texture is created there. And the geometric pattern is screen printed with a chemical that pulls the dye back out of the fabric. So pattern, design. Again, not having much background in the world of fashion, I gave it my best, and this is some of the impressive to me looking boards, but really kind of like the art fair, I felt, okay, that's enough for me to know that that's not for me. But very thankful to have that experience. These are screen prints, more pattern design, commercial. So I'm really starting to look at the two-dimensional and combine it with the three-dimensional object in the world. And of course, we have to talk about commercialism, materialism, you know, fashion design and advertising even, how we are understanding and thinking about the syntax and language of images around us in our world. So here's a dress. Again, the fabric, really exciting for me as a printmaker to start to work with the fabric, something I can dye, something I can discharge. You'll see these razor blades are actually discharged where the fabric is being, or the, dye is being pulled back out of the fabric. So yeah, taking it within that context of design, making it a wearable. Okay, vulnerability. Now this is looking at my second year of graduate school. I've kind of gone through all the basics. Okay, this is what pattern design is about. This is what the School of Human Ecology is doing. But what do I want to do? I want to push these boundaries, right? I want to make my work and challenge the traditions of that format. So I've created an upholstery here on this fainting sofa. I've titled it Unchained Heart. There you can see the close-up is a screen printed version of drawing that I created. So this kind of overall aesthetic that once you zoom in, you think, oh, that's not what I expected maybe. You know, it looks like a nice antique 30s fainting sofa, but then you see these hearts and chains breaking apart. So the wallpaper again behind it, another example of something that you might not expect. It's based on a damask pattern, and these close-up are collaged assemblages of nude women from that same era, 1920s, 30s. Integral heirloom, found object, silver platters, and then with not a traditional printmaking process, but a digital process, I've selected images of different women. I think it was from mainly a source, a book. I think it was Peep Show or Pinup. I think it was Peep Show. But I thought, wow, here are these women at the turn of the century, you know, nude and selling their image on these postcards. I think, wow, that's great. They're making a living and they're having some autonomy and freedom for their self. But then also, they're kind of trapped and confined by the world that they're existing in for that time period to objectify, become objectified this way, hence the silver platter. So looking at these, I've again took the image from those, here's some close-up. I took the image and isolated just the portraits on a few of them, and then screen printed them on a velvet. This has been screen printed and then the pile removed. So hand-dyed fabric, screen printed to elevate and isolate the women from the nudity, to show that they're powerful. So I've included different quotes around their head, framing them. Also with mirrors in the space, so we start to think about our own place in time. And these are what are written around each portrait. So thinking about boundaries. So if you start to see that snowball effect of my theme throughout my artistic career, thinking about the monks, right, and their choices that they're making, and maybe this opportunity is better, and that, maybe this path is better, maybe that path, how are the choices determined by the exterior factors, similar to the women on the silver platters? So maybe they have some freedoms, but what is guiding their choices? So this is what I'm thinking of when I think of boundaries. Textile design, again, looking at texture and patterns and our surroundings. These are flyers from my collection of punk shows. I was always at the local show back home, and this is an exhibition of that collection. So being part of a community of outsiders, if you will, kind of pushing boundaries and exploring different possibilities and straying off the path of maybe expectations in life. So being a fan of punk rock, I was aware early on, before probably mainstream knowledge, of the Pussy Riot, a controversy where 3 women of the Russian punk band were arrested. There's a big movement to follow. This is a work that I did while they were still incarcerated. I don't have an image of this, but these women, their stage costume would be, they would wear bright colored balaclavas. So the intention here in this piece was to kind of unveil them and turn that balaclava inside out, each one represented by the color of mask that they wore. Similarly to taking a look individually at the monk or at the woman figure, as a portrait. Who is this person behind the idea? So I took those posters out on the streets of Madison. They didn't last long. I think someone saw free art, so they weren't up very long, or I don't know, maybe someone disagreed with the message and took them down. So let's see. This must have been in the fall. I went down to Chicago. It's about a 3-hour distance from Madison, and I went to Riot Fest. So from there, I got a lot of great material. So looking at the women on the silver platters, I wanted to get back into my own photography. So I went there with the intention of getting some portraiture for a series that I was thinking about. So I just love these pictures, especially the lady with the hamburger. I think that's great. So we're starting with these, and I'm going to show you the end resulting work just to share a little bit of my process. So I take this photograph, also to be noted, a part of the artistic process is putting myself out there and meeting people that I would not normally talk to, maybe. It's really amazing what a camera will do. It will allow a lot of walls to come down. And I've also had people say that they don't want their photo taken, and I respect that. But I take a photograph, I digitally isolate just the part that I would like to use, and there you have. I don't know how well you can see on this scale, but this is now half-toned to be able to reproduce through a screen print. So then I print this. This was on fabric that is, let's say, I think 40, I don't know, it must be 42 by, we'll say 12 feet. I don't remember the exact measurements of this. But working in my world of fashion design, this is where I'm really starting to break down the walls and challenge what's expected of me as a designer. And I'm still creating a repeating pattern, but on a scale that is unprecedented for that style of design. So you can start to see the hula hoop from one edge to the other. So these actually repeat. And you can see it just goes on and on. And this particular fabric is treated with rust and vinegar. So I'm moving away from traditional fabric dyes and plant-based dyes. Just kind of exploring, I think. That's one thing graduate school is good for, exploring. So here you can see this is part of the studio in the School of Human Ecology, 15-foot long tables. Urgency. So here I am, I think I'm in my second year, possibly my final year of graduate school. And I see an opportunity to apply for an exhibition at the MoCA, which is Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. And so that was exciting, an opportunity again. I can't urge you enough to really look for things and participate. So I created a proposal to treat a wall space. A lot of other design in this exhibition were three-dimensional, but I kind of stuck with what I felt, is my pursuit as a graduate student, the installation in the gallery space. So I took over this wall. The only rule here really was find a piece of work in the permanent collection and create an artwork inspired by that piece. So you can see this young person looking at a print that was actually created at Crown Point Press in San Francisco. This is Christopher Brown's work titled Rain. And so the piece I created, existing behind it on the wall, I titled Fleeting. So these people, these collaged figures are falling like rain. And I'm talking about urgency in my work as, and even as an artist, to have an awareness that things don't last forever, right? Things are fleeting. As was this installation, you can see the printed paper is not permanently tacked down on that wall. This does not exist except for in that time period that it was hanging on that wall. Oh, and the textured background, again, is snow. A photograph I took, so that melting, the idea, the snow comes and melts. Okay, same time period. It's a lot of work in this 3-year span, but really exploring different ideas, and hopefully you're making these connections. This is a piece entitled "The Cost of Oil," and these are screen printed images of U.S. casualties from the Afghan and Iraq War. This is only a small section of them. Limitations of time and pursuit of future project to complete. But these are screen printed in motor oil and also screen printing ink. And this is on panel. And this same image screen printed again in motor oil, but on canvas, this time no ink. And it's my images here are based on the New York Times series Faces of the Dead. It's a really moving website. It's really beautifully done. You can see on this veteran's face here, these squares are made up of all different portraits. You can click, it's interactive, you can click on one and learn their story. So thinking about pattern, thinking about death, thinking about fleeting moments in our lives, taking the pattern off of the fabric and putting it into our physical space. I created this piece called Dying to Be Free. So I'm also looking again at those parameters from which we are making our path in life, our choices, how we're restricted by the things around us. One of my favorite examples is thinking about a highway, right? So unless, we get on that highway, we drive, but we don't really stop to think there's another way to get there, right? So past and future are things that determine where we are, and I'm looking at pattern in that same respect. So close up. That's screen printed with black on black, and then laser cut lettering. Part of a larger show where I'm playing with ideas of that message in different contexts. So. And then finally, reflection. So this is where I'm coming to my MFA exhibition, kind of making sense of it all, these different ideas and themes that I've been working on. This to me is a self-portrait. These are washboards. There are 20 of them, and I'm kind of referencing a lyric from Bob Dylan, Subterranean Homesick Blues. He says, 20 years of schooling, and then they put you on the day shift, right? So here I am at the end of 20 years, literally, of being institutional education. What am I going to do now? Because the last time didn't go so well, right? So here's my washboard, all submerged with mud from actually my backyard of the home I grew up in, Kentucky. So no matter how much you're going to scrub away at that, you're going to leave an impression of, one to the next is going to affect each other. You can't clean your cloth with a muddy washboard. So these are silk handkerchiefs with the print of that washboard. I'm going to close up. So I actually, outside of these existing as their own artwork, I use those washboards to dye this fabric with mud. And this was a big part of that final exhibition. I'll show you a process. It was not very easy to deal with that much material. This is, I think, 10 feet by 25 feet. So vaguely you can make out the image of a figure here. That's the way I printed this fabric was white ink on white fabric, washed with the mud, and then the next step was to screen print again this is actually with graphite, powdered graphite and a medium. So I've moved completely away from traditional inks or dyes. Oh, I'm sorry, except the white. The white is an ink. Right, so breaking out of those boundaries and looking at the subject matter, these people here, let me back up. Each of these persons, similar to that Polaroid project, these are people that are acquaintances of mine. Some I know better than others, but they're people who have influenced me or crossed paths in my life that I've become inspired by, and they live more or less by their own rules. Musicians, private chef, there's a corset trainer. I couldn't think of the word, corset trainer. So these people are living non-traditional and working in non-traditional ways. That was very inspiring to me, and to share their story was important. So opposite that installation of fabric, I had, I think, 7 large-scale mirrors, and that was my intention, to really create this space where the viewer is also included in the exhibition. So a place to look back and, well, how do I fit into this environment? How do I fit into this world that I'm, currently existing in? Am I making the choices because I have the freedom to, or am I making choices for myself because that's what I'm limited by? And those mirrors, I've etched the mirror out with piano scrolls, so each of them has their own song, so visual representation of song. And there I am, critiqued by one of my favorite and most inspiring artists, my mother. Right, I think as Lisa mentioned in the introduction, I moved directly from graduate school to this job here at Evergreen. Extremely fortunate. If you, like I said, I think it's a theme you've noticed throughout. You see an opportunity, make yourself a part of it. You don't know, you could get that job. So this is our printmaking studio on campus. It is gorgeous, and it's set up, ready for classes, ready for you guys to become a part of it, and to inspire you to get moving and do some things with your career, if it's art related or not. There's a lot of ways to further your development and look at what trajectory, how you can make your own path. Take advantage of the student loans or student grants on campus. It's, if anything, a great experience to learn the process. And also, perfect timing, next week, October 19th, as the graduate school fair. So whether you're thinking about it or not, I got a lot out of it, but also I was willing to put a lot into it. Right, so that's all. Thank you.